So welcome, 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 our brilliant colleague, Matthias. We so appreciate your consistent leadership. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by acknowledging our creator, by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks and acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Matthias, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share bits about your remarkable work?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Victor. Appreciate the opportunity to share more about our work and myself. So my name is Matthias Priest. I'm calling in from Boston today, traditional lands of the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts peoples. I am many things, including a son, a brother, a husband, but also someone more relevant to this conversation who's dedicated his career to facilitating the flow of financial capital toward solutions that are faced by humanity. So started my career off in sustainability consulting and environmental impact analysis, but quickly moved over into the world of social finance and impact investment. And in this space, I've worked in a variety of roles, consulting and grant making, outcomes-based funding, blended finance, private fund management, all sorts, and worked across both public, private, and social sectors. So have touched a lot of corners of the impact investment world, but I currently find myself at as manager of impact investments at World Education Services. So a little bit about WES. WES is a global nonprofit and social enterprise. We're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, so 50 years of highly impactful work, which we're quite proud of. The vision of WES at its core is really that everyone is able to put their education, experience, and skills to work anywhere in the world. And we do that in several ways. We achieve that vision in several ways. So our core product as a social enterprise is providing academic credential evaluations that enable immigrants, refugees, international students, and other migrants to fulfill their potential in their new homes. So say someone who got an engineering bachelor's degree in Bangladesh wants to come to Canada to study their master's, they'll come to us for credential evaluation to say this is the equivalent of your bachelor's degree, and enable you to study here in Canada or the US. So that's our core business, and the revenue that we generate from that social enterprise fuels the work that we do to support those communities in other ways. And so over the past decade or so, we've set up other functions at WES across policy and advocacy work, across direct programming, working with employers to incorporate more inclusive practices. We do grant making both in the US and Canada. And then finally, our investment function, which was established in 2020, led by my colleague Smitha Das. And this is where I work. So our team is responsible for stewarding the financial assets of the social enterprise and doing so in a way that is aligned with our social mission. So I'm personally responsible for a piece of our portfolio that invests in private market impact investments. We invest both directly in other social enterprises, whether they be for-profit or nonprofit. We invest in the US and Canada, and we invest in investment funds that are aligned with our social mission. And we invest in solutions that advance economic, social, and educational inclusions for communities that have historically been overlooked, underinvested in. So that looks like our core target population of immigrants, refugees, displaced persons, international students, but also more broadly, communities of color, low-income communities, and other underserved groups. So that's at a high level what WES is and what I'm doing here.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for all that context. And we've known each other. I didn't even realize up until today the extents of your background and bandwidth. That's remarkable. Thank you so much, Matthias. So my next question is, what's inspiring you right now in your work? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at nights?
Start with the inspiration. So I've been with WES for just over a year now, and there's a lot that inspires me in the work that we do. But I also want to mention what inspires me to do the work in the first place. So my grandparents came to Canada from what's now the Ukraine as refugees during and in the aftermath of the violence of World War II. And they were able to come to Canada and establish a new life for themselves and be welcomed by their community. And I've been immensely privileged as a result of their efforts, and I'm incredibly proud of their ability to overcome the many challenges that migrants face in their situation. And so their story is very much a part of mine, and is one of the reasons why I'm so inspired to work at West, because we're continuing to give folks like my grandparents the opportunity to fulfill their potential in their new home. So that's like what's inspiring about the work, or what brought me to the work. But there's also inspiring things happening at West. And so I think the most inspiring thing about the work that we do is the thoughtful approach that we're taking toward impact investing. So the way I'll sort of describe that is in how we define impact in impact investing. And that's in the who, the what, and the how of our investment practice. So I think most often impact investors will think about their impact in as the what. All right, we're a fintech investor, or we're an investor that invests in affordable housing. That's the what, that's the impact. Great. There's nothing wrong with that. But we try to expand that boundary a little bit to think about the who, the what, and the how. So in terms of the who, what does that mean for us? That means that we're intentionally looking to support proximate leaders. That means leaders who are closest to the issues that they're trying to solve in the world. That means backing leaders with lived, learned, labored experiences. And in doing so, we hope to also just be making common sense investment decisions. Unfortunately, due to many reasons, that hasn't been the sort of common sense decision to make of late, but that's what we're trying to do. And so we're trying to facilitate the flow of capital into the hands of those who have historically not had access to it due to all sorts of systemic barriers that you know all about and are researching actively. So that looks like investing in first-time venture founders, emerging and first-time fund managers, and trying to address the failure of the industry's sort of standardized due diligence criteria of track record, and trying to, and their very narrow definition of track record, and blow that up a bit and talk about what that makes this person a good partner and investment opportunity. What about their experiences mean that they're actually low risk when other people are putting them in a high risk category. So in facilitating the flow of capital to these groups, we're also hoping to facilitate the flow of power. And we think, and power is one of our sort of key investment themes. So that brings me to sort of the what. What are the solutions that we're investing in? We're investing across 4 themes: opportunity, wealth, power, and justice. So in our opportunity theme, we're investing in solutions that facilitate access to and mobility within systems. So these include things like educational systems, professional systems, financial systems. So in common impact investment language, that means we're investing in ed tech, workforce development, financial inclusion, things like that. In our wealth theme, we're investing in solutions that provide opportunities to build wealth for those who have historically been excluded from those opportunities and not been afforded those opportunities. So that looks like giving people the chance to own their own home, own their own business, and also co-own assets alongside their communities. Thirdly, the power theme is where we're looking to invest in proximate leaders, in models that advance worker voice and power, and in models that, again, shift that decision-making of where capital flows to the community level. And then finally, our justice theme rounds out sort of the what of our impact, and that's where we're seeking investments in community self-determination, in solutions related to criminal justice and the intersection of immigration and criminal justice, and in field building and narrative change. So those are sort of 2 ways in which we define our impact. And lastly is the how. And as I said, I think this is an area that's far too often overlooked. So I don't think Wes is necessarily doing anything revolutionary here, but I think we're starting to think thoughtfully about the investment process and the relationships within the investment process. and try to approach them a little bit differently, such that we can share power more equitably in the sector. And so we describe our approach to investing as trust-based investing. And I think trust has always been inherent in an investment relationship. Lawyers can try to contract the trust piece out of it, but there's always going to be trust. And so it's not novel to have trust be an element of the relationship, but I think it's novel to put it at the forefront and to name it as critical in the investment process. And so what do we mean when we say we take a trust-based investing approach? It means that we start with the relationship. It means that our relationships with our partners are based on respect and accountability and mutual learning and transparency. And it means often just putting the relationship in front of the transaction. It also means doing our homework when we're doing diligence on potential investment opportunities. It means sharing diligence with other funders and gathering information from other funders before we ask long diligence questionnaires and whatnot, particularly when we're talking about people that are raising their first funds or their first capital, right? There's already so many hurdles and so much burden on them. So how can we take some of that burden off of our prospective investee partners? It also means being really flexible in our approach. So we're in a privileged position as an asset owner and managing our own assets, where we can invest across a lot of different structures. We're not beholden to a certain structure because of commitments we've made to our limited partners, fund managers and founders where they are, and provide the right size and the right type of capital at the right time. It also means redefining risk, which I kind of alluded to. And it also means demonstrating participatory investment models. So we've been partnering with other folks and seeding different models that seed power to those who are closest to the issue. So partnering with Village Capital for a participatory investing accelerator program, and funding Action Lab on participatory investing that brought together 8 different funders in the space to move the field forward on this work. So trying to do some field building as well. And finally, and then I'll stop talking, but it's supporting partners beyond the check. So, it's not just about writing the check and walking away. It's how do we leverage all the great minds at West, whether it be our communications team, our philanthropic team. How can we leverage West, but also leverage our network to support our partners and just act as, strategic sounding boards to our partners. So it's a long-winded way of saying it's all those practices. It's those differences in how we approach the impact in impact investing that inspires me with our work.
That's absolutely remarkable. And I love those 4 pillars, especially the justice piece. We live in a time when you're in the States, and now creeping into Canada, there's a pushback on ESG and DEI, and centering justice, access, inclusion, diversity, decolonization, equity are so important in these times. And as one of our elders says, justice is what love looks like in public. So I really appreciate that justice piece, and especially the trust piece. Like the fact that the trust isn't this novel virtue signaling thing, like providing trust and grace towards the folks that you're investing in and knowing they're doing the work, I think is remarkable. And yeah, just really powerful. So once again, I appreciate all that context, transparency, candor, and leadership. I really appreciate you. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you and your team working to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
One piece of our work that I think comes with some challenges is we have an incredibly diverse portfolio of partners that's diverse across geography, it's diverse across sectors. So, I was mentioning some before about like financial inclusion, higher education, workforce development, employee ownership, affordable housing, civic engagement. All of these sectors, we have partners that are working in these sectors. And I think one challenging thing with a portfolio of partners like that is developing a cohesive impact measurement and management strategy where you're able to aggregate across the portfolio and say, look, these are the 5 things that really show to our partners and show to the field, this is the impact that we're having on the world. Again, luckily, we're not in a position where we need to necessarily create a shiny report like that every year to appease investors or partners. I acknowledge that lots of people need to do that, and I commend them for taking on that challenge. But our response to that sort of challenge has been just that simply we don't aggregate metrics across our portfolio. Instead, we rely on a few things. We rely on stories from our partners. We have this thing where we report internally on stories of change, which I think is quite powerful. And then we also just say to our partners at the outset of our relationship is what metrics do you track already to indicate success in your work and impact on your clientele or investees? We think that asking folks what matters to them, what results in sort of individually tailored impact measurement systems that really tell more powerful stories than watering things down by forcing a particular measurement system or particular metrics across a group of really diverse folks. So that's one challenge and sort of way that we're getting around it, although I acknowledge that we're in a slightly different position that enables us to do that. But another challenge I think that arises from having such a diverse portfolio is finding ways in which these partners can support each other, right? We are a small team. We try to provide, tailored support to our partners, but we also want to create a network effect of throughout our portfolio such that they can support each other. But it's sometimes it's difficult to find common ground, say between a private equity firm focused on financing employee ownership transitions in the US with a pre-seed Canadian venture helping international students find jobs, right? Like where's the overlap there? How can they help each other? And so I'd say this is definitely like a work in progress. We have not like cracked the code on this, but one story of success or an indication that we're going in the right direction is last year, right before the SOCAP conference, we brought together our partners for the first time in person. And we received really good feedback from that convening. And I think it's in part because we worked with a facilitator to talk to and thought hard about how do we focus the discussion of the day. And so what we focused on were things like not solutions to challenges based on specific investment structures and the challenges that individual partners were having necessarily related to their structures, but more on changes that they want to see in the impact investor community, particularly with regards to investor practices and fundraising and things like that, because everybody engages with investors, and it also leverages the position of Wes as an investor with quite a loud voice in the field relative to our assets under management, and enables us to take all those insights away and try to influence the field a little bit and do some field building and some narrative change. And so I think thinking pretty critically about finding those areas of common ground and how Wes can be a partner to all these folks was a way to sort of create a little bit of a network effect where it was maybe difficult to find. I think the last challenge is ensuring that we activate all the amazing minds at World Education Services. I mentioned the sort of functions that we have at WES of grant making and policy and advocacy in the core business. There's hundreds of people that work at our organization, and we're a 2-person investment team. And so it's about how do we tap into all of the expertise at an organization like this to impact and support our partners. And we're definitely, again, don't have the code cracked there, but it's about sitting across leadership teams, having cross-committee, cross-function committees, right? Knowledge sharing internally. And we've sort of grown our knowledge management practice internally, really to facilitate sharing across these what can often be silos. And so I think it's a work in progress, but it's something we're looking to address.
Incredible. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all that context. So it's a perfect segue to my next question. How do you feel about the future of impact investing in Canada or even globally? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you hopeful? How do you feel?
I think there's a lot of ways in which one can be pessimistic. I have the pleasure of having sort of optimism DNA built into me, which is great. I think there was a lot of negative chatter in the market last year about backlash to ESG and politicized backlash to ESG investing, that legal fights on the racial equity investment lens front. I think all of that we can look at and say those are challenges, those make us pessimistic for the future. But one underlying thing across those issues is that more and more people are learning about how to invest with impact and how others are investing with impact. And I think some of that bad press is still good because it's still press. It's still, ESG is everywhere now. You can't escape it. Now that comes with its challenges because people are doing it poorly. There are bad actors who are just trying to make a quick buck. But it's household language now. Impact investing, I think, is hot on its heels, right? And so when you have the rapid growth that an industry like impact investing and ESG has, it's going to come with growing pains, and I think we're feeling them now. But I'm an optimist. I think this is good. I think it will force us to develop better standards, better measurement systems, industry associations, push us forward to progress in ways that are helpful and not hurtful.
I love that. That's incredible. Thank you. And I couldn't agree more. So my second last question, what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues at WES?
Yeah, so I think success for me looks like scaling what we're doing well, and then constantly looking inward and questioning what we're doing, our values, our systems, and our practices, and ensuring that we leave behind, practices that are at best unhelpful and at worst destructive. I think, we talked a lot about, a lot of good things that we're doing today, but, we don't have it all figured out. We're on a learning journey just like everyone else. And so I think that constant sort of inward analysis and critical analysis of our own practices and how we share power and how we show up in a trust-based way, we need to sort of constantly evolve. And so I think, again, success looks like taking what we're doing well and scaling it up, and then making sure that we're constantly looking inward.
Sure. Thank you. So my last question, Matthias, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Send interesting investment opportunities my way. But seriously, I think the call to action is for investors. I think when you're thinking about your impact investment strategy, don't just think about the what of impact. Consider who you're investing in, treat them as partners first, look to redefine risk, question industry norms and standards, look to support folks who've been systemically excluded, but also consider how you invest. Critically examine your systems, your processes, your decision-making frameworks. Ask your partners how you can be a better partner to them. Talk to your peers about best practices, and constantly look inward. And if you want to, reach out and have a dialogue about this, I'm always looking for peer investors to talk about this stuff with, because we can't do it on our own.
I couldn't agree more. And I really like, in an age of virtue signaling, bad actors, you mentioned folks trying to make a quick buck. I really appreciate your consistent solidarity, your tenacity, and your visionary leadership. You consistently show up, and we just appreciate everything that you do for so many, Matthias, and your colleagues at WES. We really appreciate you. And as always at Setsi, we close the way we began this conversation by giving thanks and acknowledging our creator, by giving thanks and acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Matthias, for all that you do for so many.
Thank you, Victor. I appreciate you.